All right, how's it going, folks? I'm just going through the comments, and what actually sparked me to do this video is through one of the comment Aussie Matters has made. It's on the description. Before I kick in, those who does not know what Australian policy is, pretty much before Gough Whitlam came into office as a Labor, and just be clarifying, he's Labor. Australia was only hiring white people only, and usually it's European. So it can be blue eyes or hazel eyes or brown eyes, as long as you have white skin. And usually the first wave is the Brits, then you got the Irish, and later on it spread out UK, then later on Europeans. During that time, there was a high poll of which certain groups should come or who deserve to not to come at all. So the highest group was during that time were less likely to come was the Jewish, the Middle Eastern, the people, the continent on Africa, besides South Africa, and South Africa white, and another one. What's the last one? Asians. All right, and Latin America. But in anything got to do with America or Canada or things like that, it was good to go. But the bottom of the list was Middle Eastern and countries in Africa. Sorry if I'm generalizing continent, but I cannot name drop all the countries out there. So now we live in 2019. We have all shapes of colors, shade, rainbow, brown, black, all of them all together. So things has changed over the time. So there you go. That's a bit of that. And yeah, so now the comment that I'm replying is, that's what he wrote, Aussie Matters. So without a continued flow of 150% hyped up Red Bull drinking, hit the ground running migrants, the lazy Australians would cease to exist. Okay, this is a very interesting one. Okay, now a bit about a background myself, especially for Aussie Matters and to viewers out there, is I used to study social work, bachelor degree. I dropped halfway through because I've realized it was more focused on social justice and very extreme feminist, or if I have to say, I'm not going to say it out loud. Okay. Okay, there you go. I've already said it out, but yeah, I dropped out and to aged care. So if you look, let's just put Australia away. Let's just focus on the history. Where did unemployment benefits, or Australians, the media likes to say, dole bludgers, or benos, dole bludgers, okay? Before we kick into it, we have to look in the history, and this is what social works do. We'll look in the history. There was no government incentive if you're unemployed, all right? Whether during the time, right, and there's seasonal works, right? Whether you work in a farm or whether you work in, growing some crops, and, certain crops grow in certain season. And once the crop's finished, there are many jobless. Or some factory jobs, they're seasonal as well. During that time, it was more of, even before Industrial Revolution, it was more agriculture. We're more focused on the agriculture because Australia is very lucky, to be honest. We didn't went much, we didn't have to go through that long period of agriculture. We kick into Industrial Revolution straight away, if you look at it in the history. And yeah, and now we live in the technology, and the next stage is AI technology, so pretty much cloud. Thank you. So I'll get back to the topic. I know it's 4 minutes and I think you guys are freaking out already. Okay, so back then people have no jobs, or people are homeless. We're going to get jobs. So they go work in poorhouse or workhouse. When they're working there, It's work in return of food and accommodation. They work the hardest, the most brutal job. Then there's land tax, right? So land tax, they have to pay the taxes. Everyone pays the property tax or land tax. To, during that time, it was more of a charity base, right? It's more of a religious, it's helping the poor, giving the poor, it's not compulsory, for you to go to the workhouse. As number grew, all the wage earners, when I talk about wage earners, is the income earners. They say, hey, while I'm working my ass off getting paid, where these guys, they don't have to work for money, and they're lazy off, and they get some bit of work and have a food and accommodation in return. May as well do that. I don't have to pay my bills or whatever what they call it now, back in the days. So it weakens the wage earners, and it gone out of control. The governments of the UK, they're like, shit, more and more people, it crippled, it's dysfunctional. Oh, more people are getting on to workhouse. Immediately, what the government did is they shut it down. And after that, they shut it down. Government, didn't really care as a social problem, being unemployed, right? They don't really care. You're bad luck. You're the scum of the society. You deserve to be that. And they started to realize, oh, crap, after World War II, oh, Jesus. Oh. Or World War One, oh, Jesus. Oh, it's actually not a scum. It's actually, oh, wow, it's a society problem because, damn, if we go on a recession, we go on war, there's no money generating wealth, there's bad and things like that. So they reopened working poorhouse or workhouse. Now, this time it was not for the charity or the religion who opened up. It was more of the fact of the, what was the word called? It was more of the government who's running it. They were very strict, and they're making sure, are you able-bodied instead of disabled, right? If you're disabled, then you have your fair share. If you're elderly, you have your fair share. But if you're an able-bodied person, when I mean by able-bodied, means that you have no fracture, no disability or anything. You're fit to work and everything like that. So you have that. And I'm like, okay, you work, but they give you the most hardest, toughest work. And people who have left with no choice or couldn't survive, or they can walk in and walk out of this as a poorhouse or working house, but they choose not to, or they choose to, because it's miserable. You're doing the most toughest of the jobs ever. Then that happened. Then I started, world wars and things like that. Then they started to realize, oh, now this is coming to Australia law now, because this has been working house or poorhouse only established 2 or 3 facilities in Australia, but it wasn't full on as Britain was, because Australia was fairly new country. So after World War I, they started to realize, shit, there's unemployment. Jesus, this is a normal thing. Went to World War I, damn, it was all of that. After World War II, they started to realize we got to make something different. So World War II, they introduced unemployed and sickness benefits. Yeah, that's the one. Let me Google it. So unemployed and sickness benefits. That's what they called it back then. Let me just call it. I did my assessment on this as well. So it was back in the days. Like, you won't find it now until you have to go very deep. I'm not going to pull my academics assessment up. There's too much. Look, okay. So I'll get it in a proper legal term. Unemployment and Sickness Benefit Act 1944. There you go. Boom. Kaboosh. That's after World War II, or during World War II. So yeah, so that has happened. And, we went under recession, after World War II. And then slowly we went a lot better after World War II. That's when we have white goods, we have washing machines and things like that. Blah, 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 blah. You name it. Now today, let's go all the way to white Australian policy. You see, when Whitlam came in, it was probably 1974 or 1973, one of the years, either way. White Australian policy was abolished between, I don't have the correct year, but it's 1970. Oh, Jesus. I'm getting abolished date. Okay, 1973. So Whitlam ended in 1973. And I know 1975, that's when Whitlam has opened the multicultural. And the first one he came in is the Vietnamese, the Viet Congs, if you have to put it that way, the Viets, or the Southeast Indo-Chinese. You'll have to put it that way, or yeah, Viets. So before that, I know Aussie Matters. I know you've heard of Ando, the comedian, the Sydney comedian. You know him. And what he said on his memoir, The Happiest Refugee, was when they escaped from Vietnam War and came by boat to Australia, got accepted to Australia with warm, big hug, you know, for everyone, is that the thing about it is there was so many open opportunities. And when I was reading the book, you know, there wasn't many duck farms. You know, the Vietnamese community, they like to eat ducks. So they opened ducks. They were very successful and, you know, running duck eggs and selling ducks, and with the Asian community and other community at the same time. And it was a family. Everyone was working. And after that, then you got like the sewing business. And the Vietnamese, they were known for sewing business. It was a golden opportunity during that time. So now I'm going to fast forward to my parents who came to Australia. All right. My parents came to Australia in 1988 or 89, one of the years. And Australia just entered the recession. All right. And which the Paul Keating says, the recession that we must have. Right. So interest rate hit up to 18, 19%. And houses just skyrocketed. Now, I know Aussie Matters, you live in Sydney. I was an ex-Sydney, but I'm going to talk about it in another video, on the replying video. But my parents were living in St Kilda. Now, St Kilda is Melbourne. I'm living in Melbourne right now. So St Kilda was a red light district. It's like less than 1 or 2 kilometers to the city. It's a red light district. It's a scum of the city. It's pretty much just like saying to you guys, it's like Balmain or King's Cross. It's like a red light district. Now, King's Cross has cleaned up already. So you have that, right? And what my parents, my dad told me, and many migrants has told me, is many people, like many businesses or warehouses, were dragging my dad in to get a job. It's like, you want to work? They drag you in straight away. You don't need resumes or anything or what we have nowadays. They drag you in, you get the job straight away. They're urgently wanting workers. Now, many, I'm not just saying Chinese, they'll say lazy Australians. Because during that time, you know, there's a hard work and Australia didn't want to do anything. What did the Vietnamese did change Australia when they did came, 1975 and onwards, is that Australia used to be a very, very Christian, very strong based Christian. And Saturdays, shops are meant to close before 12 or 12:30. There's no Sunday trading because you have Sabbath day, right? Whether you're Catholic or Christian or... Gosh, you guys have so many names. Orthodox, or gosh, man, I don't know, man. You guys have so many names. I don't Anglican. I don't know what's the difference between all the Protestants and just Anglo-Saxon. You guys got so many names. I don't know. It's very strong. What the Vietnamese did change with Australia is making to 7 days trading, because Vietnamese didn't believe in Sabbath. They're not strong as Christianity. Yes, some of them are Catholics, but not all of them. So, you know, they work overtime. They're stealing jobs, or perhaps they're stealing the jobs. They're doing all the work. And after that, Australia did 7 days. Okay. Now, this is a very interesting, you know, moment to think about it, because if you look back at it, it's crazy just to think about it. You know, the whole thing, everything's like that. And I'll talk a lot more on other areas. Aussie Matters, if you want more, let me know. I'll hit you up more as much as I can. But what I'm trying to tell you in this video is, during that time, it wasn't 150% hyped up. It was probably 5 or 10% or 2%. There was plenty of jobs. Then word of mouth gets spread to worldwide, saying, you know, Australia has work, this and that. Exactly the same thing with the Italians and the Greeks when they came to Australia. They're, you know, in the snowy mountains, and they're the first one who built a water pump or hydrogen in the snowy mountains, right? And water station. because they know how to build it. They had the knowledge, they have the engineer, they have the brain. There was skill shortage in Australia during that time. We need labourers. We were dying for workers. Now, I know New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria were used to be just one state. All right. Then when they kind of split it up, right? One is Victoria, one is Queensland. All right. Now, for New South Wales, what I do know is most of the conflicts stayed in New South Wales. Why Victoria is a lefty state is because most of the educated people, or you guys, you know this terminology, or my feminist teacher always said this, £10 joke, right? The £10 commies or the Europeans came to Australia, and they most of them, the educated or the £10 jokes, the educated one stayed in Victoria. And I don't know how they turned to lefty. I don't know how, but I think it's more educated people. In Melbourne, they're more care about more politics, identity politics, way more stronger than Sydney. Sydney, I don't really care about. So that's what they care. So 150% hyped up. Now, this could be anything because we live in a globalization. We live in a society, open trade around the world, and human rights. Human rights and all of them all combined together in feminist or theories and third wave, fourth wave, what you guys have included, all tied in together. It's about human rights and hyped up 150%. Now, I know Pauline Hanson has made a good suggestion on reducing, and same as Mark Latham, all right, with the New South Wales electorates. So you have that going on. All right, so when you have that, now there's no jobs in Australia. Of course, it's hyped up to the point, to this stage. And now, when I made that video, a continuous flow of migrants creates early retirement for locals. When I created the video, it stated that, many, my parents and the Vietnamese, they make so much money. Now, the new wave of migrants, they have the new trend from what they brought from their culture, or, bring it to Australia. And go berserk. For example, bubble tea. For example, banh mi. For example, pho. For example, just, like new trend of food, modern food, urbanized food, nice food. If it wasn't for Jamie Oliver, now I know before Jamie Oliver was a big hit on the news, what Jamie Oliver did change was the food. Now, Australians back then, they didn't know how to cook great food. It's all about roast. Friday was the meat roast day, right? The rest is majority is having vegetables, right? So you have that. So it does change a lot at the beginning stage. Now we hype to 150% running ground migrant. Would lazy Australians will still exist? Now, if we do not have migrant flow coming in like the way how it is today, and we kept it as a white Australian policy, that's the main title of the video, it will collapse. I'll be honest with you, it will definitely collapse. Now, I've spoken to the Greeks when they came a lot ahead of the Chinese and the Viets. And they told me there were so many jobs in the area. And if it wasn't, and this is what they quoted, if it wasn't for the Chinese or the Asians to come to Australia, Australia will be another European. Pretty much will be another European. And that's what they stated it. And the reason why I'm saying this, and the reason why I'm agreeing this is because Australia used to be a golden era, the best country, the luckiest country. You have pensions, you have welfare, you have benos, and you have everything. Lifestyle is great, everything. But now governments are cutting down areas, single mom parenting, child up to 7 years old and things like that. And when you have that title of luckiest country, now I'm pretty sure during the white Australian policy, the life expectancy, the lifespan, all right, sorry man, I cannot even pronounce the words. the lifespan, the general lifespan wasn't to like 80 nowadays. Nowadays, it's like minimum age is 80. Like average age is people dying is 80 years old or 70. They're going to lift the retirement age from 75 to 67, 65 to 67. Sorry, it's going to increase even more. Okay, so you got that. Why would I say lazy Australians would exist? If you're born in a generation, it keeps getting better. There's welfare, this and that. And, there's services like, for example, there's aged care and there's social work, there's social well-being, there's welfare work, there's pretty much other areas. Why would you bother to raise your kids in very, very surviving? Like you really rely on your kids, because if you look at the Eastern countries, they don't have strong social welfare. But the rules is whatever was the family problem, it stays within the family, not the government looks after. You see, before the white Australian before multiculturalism, Australia was very good. It was a very comfortable lifestyle. There was more people working than compared to racial to unemployment, and they can afford to have the pensions and everything like that. It will exist because of once the next generation has brought up, right? So let's not fast forward. Let's go all the way back. When the convicts came to Australia, they're like, "Oh, there's a golden opportunity. There's jobs everywhere. There's wow, And then this news spread to Britain. The Britain is like saying, "Oh, look at Australia. It's so good. There's jobs. There's money. Look at Britain. We're in recession. There's no job, and everyone's just coming in. There's work. Keep working. Keep working." Once social welfare has kicked in, and it's been labeled as the golden era, the laziest, the country that is the best of the world, like the best living. And even now, Melbourne has won 7 or 8 years livable city in today's world. I know I'm juggling back and forth, but you quite understand what I'm saying. So you have that, right? Then what you're actually doing is the fact that you're creating the next generation has born into the golden era, the luxury. Now, parents doesn't need to force their kids to go to university, right? University back then is like you have to be very, very rich to get into university, or you're very born to be very, very smart, or as I like to call it, the privilege IQ, and to get into university, right? Well, back then, most people, the ones that's making the best money are the ones that works in the trades or in the factory. Well, having university, not really up there. So it was more of very comfort, because lifestyle is comfort. We have no threat. We have, besides of the Japan invasion in Darwin, that was about it. But, Whitlam has abolished the military service, all right, compulsory. And there's no threat in Australia. Besides, we have dingoes. Besides, we have redback spider. Besides, we have crocodiles and sharks. Besides all these nature or desert and drought, we don't really have a threat. We don't really have an enemy. I'll give you an example what I mean by enemy. People leave their door open. When I go out in the rural, kids running around at night. If kids are running around at night of scooters, things like that, in a metropolitan Melbourne or Sydney, it's like, oh geez, these guys are troublemakers. But in the countryside, they're all safe, And countries like Brazil, all right. My roommates are from Brazil, and he told me he's scared that he may not be alive today or tomorrow because people there, they just steal your laptop. They just point a gun or they shoot you or they knife you. And that's a threat, right? And that creates, how to defend yourself and how to survive and how to, provide the best of the best, like the safety, security, hardship. But when you write about, the lazy Australia will cease to exist, It will, because you live too comfortable. We have no threat at all. No threat at all. And you have social welfare. If you're unemployed, that's all right. Just go in the Benno. You're homeless, that's all right. Go in the Bennos. You divorced, go in the Bennos. No fault divorce. Why not? Gough Whitlam opened up, right? So, Gough Whitlam is like the god of social work, to understand this whole thing. And now, looking at it now, we're 150%, of migrant. And especially where you're from, Sydney, man. I live in Sydney most of my life, and whites are being a minority, and you rarely see whites. It's that bad. But if Australia, the white Australia policy still exists, it's hard to live up, because you live in a generation of comfort and you've gone downhill. This is where there's no drive, because everyone can. You don't have to work. You don't have, you can do whatever you want. You have the freedom, whatever you want. There's no stigma. There's no name and shame. You can date whatever you want. You go Tinder as much as you want. Girlfriends as much as you want. But I know during that time it's very conservative, and also Whitlam has opened the contraceptive, because of the feminists, the second wave feminists, right? So would it still exist? No. If it's kept old traditional values and no social programs, as I mentioned before, there's a chance, all right? But it won't be that great. And you look at, for example, the prime example is Germany. Why they open their door to Syrian refugees, to accept 1 million, the whole Europe, is because they know Germany was one of the lowest. It actually beaten South Korea and Japan for the lowest birth rates. So they need to find a way to do it. And yeah, that's pretty white policy over there. It was a huge news when they opened up. And the goal is for them is to not only just to breed more numbers up, but also to look after elderly, because nobody wants to look after the elderly. Where if you're coming from a third world country, we highly value elders, because the hierarchy of the Eastern or a third world country is elders. If you're husband and wife, you look up to your elders. Your kids, it's less important. You look up to your elders, and also it's a patriarchal male focus. You look up to the grandfathers and fathers, and sons is most important. Nowadays, it's kind of flipped around, 50-50 or matriarchal, or you guys like to call it feminist. So yeah, I don't know much I can talk about now, but I think I've covered the whole thing. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, but I think some great content. If not, if you disagree with everything, I'm more than happy to read it through. Sorry for replying your message very late, but to my rest of my viewers, I don't know, do you quite understand what I'm trying to say on this video? I know it's close to 29 minutes. I hope you guys do enjoy, and yeah, all good, mate.